Tonight, a deadly invasion in northern Syria and the implications it could have for the administration here at home. Plus, impeachment approval on the rise, numbers that could spell trouble for President Trump. And he made headlines when he prayed to cast out dark spirits from Congress. We sit down with House Chaplain Father Patrick Conroy. All this and more tonight on Faith Nation. Heavy fighting as the Turkish incursion in Syria spills into day 2. Welcome to Faith Nation. I'm John Jessup.
And I'm Jenna Browder. Panic tonight in northern Syria, where the death toll is climbing.
The bloodshed comes in the wake of President Trump's decision to pull out American troops. CBN White House correspondent Ben Kennedy joins us now. Ben, this has implications well beyond the border between Syria and Turkey.
Yeah, John, Jenny, you're right. Big implications by the White House. This move by the president is creating a bit of a potential shift in the ongoing battle against ISIS. 10,000 ISIS fighters held captive by Kurdish fighters are now at risk of being freed. Gunfire heard as Turkey attacks in Syria, launching airstrikes and artillery as ground forces target Kurdish fighters, America's allies in the fight against ISIS, that Turkey claims are terrorists. Turkey says the operation will prevent a terror corridor and bring peace. Critics say President Trump gave Turkey the green light for this strike when he pulled out 50 U.S. troops.
That's just false. The United States didn't give Turkey a green light.
Trump tweeting, Turkey has been planning to attack the Kurds for a long time. They have been fighting forever. We have no soldiers or military anywhere near the attack area. I am trying to end the endless wars. This week, the commander-in-chief threatened retaliation if Turkey does anything he considers off limits.
I will wipe out his economy if that happens.
France's President Emmanuel Macron strongly condemns the Turkish offensive. So does Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who tweeted a warning against the ethnic cleansing of the Kurds by Turkey and its proxies. Israel is prepared to extend humanitarian assistance to the gallant Kurdish people. Now, the Kurds are reporting multiple civilian casualties and a few deaths. U.S. officials say some Kurdish guards have left their posts at prisons holding ISIS fighters, and in response, this morning 2 British ISIS members known as the Beatles, held by the Kurds, were taken into U.S. custody to make sure that these 2 guys just do not get out. John, Jenna?
Middle East Bureau Chief Chris Mitchell joins us now from Israel. Chris, the United Nations says 500,000 people at the border of Syria and Turkey are in danger in these attacks. Describe the humanitarian situation there on the ground.
Well, right now on the border, most of the population, I think, or a large percentage of the population in northeast Syria lies right along that northeast Syrian Turkish border. We were up there several months ago. We're in many places like Kamishli, which is actually right now under attack, Kobani, which I believe is once under attack a few hours ago. So this is where the large amount of the population is there. And we talked to a couple of Christians in Kobani last night. The father and the husband has stayed. The mother and the wife has left. But that's just an example that's happening all over this border. Literally, thousands of people are fleeing for their lives, looking for some safe refuge from this Turkish invasion.
Of course, this is an unpopular decision. Many people critical of the president removing U.S. troops from Syria, which was the catalyst for the Turkish attack. Today, the president tweeted, "Let the Kurds fight their own battles." What danger does that pose to the region?
Well, for the whole region, if this particular part of northeast Syria perhaps goes to the Syrian regime of Bashar Assad, that would invite the Russians in, the Iranians in, because right now, John, the Syrian Democratic Force leadership is seriously considering surrendering to President Bashar Assad. The reason they're doing it is that they see themselves, they see the Assad regime as a lesser evil than the Turkish government of Erdogan. And to President Trump's tweet, the Kurds and the Syrian Democratic Forces have been the #1 ally against ISIS and allied with the U.S. coalition forces. When he says they can fight for themselves, we're talking about one of the largest armies in the world, Turkey, against the equivalent of a large militia They don't have any aircraft. They don't have any heavy tanks or artillery, and yet they're expected to fight against this. It's really an unmatched battle. And we were there with many of these men and women that are literally gave their lives for the battle against ISIS. And now, tragically, many of them will lose their lives against Turkey.
Chris, today we heard from Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. He condemned the attack from Turkey. What actions are Israel prepared to take?
Well, John, I don't think Israel's planning any offensive military actions. I don't think they're going to be supporting the Syrian Democratic Forces with every military equipment. He did say that they would supply humanitarian supplies to the people up there in northeast Syria. And I think that's a bit of moral support for the people up there. But I think it's an important point to make, John, that Israel is watching this very carefully in two reasons. First of all, back on September 14th, there was an Iranian attack against Saudi Arabia. Nothing was done by the United States or Saudi Arabia. The United States is allowing President Erdogan of Turkey to come in. And again, what it sends a signal to the Middle East is that of weakness. And it also sends a serious message to Israel that it really has to stand on its own. It brings Iran that much closer to its northern border. Iran's stated goal is to get a land bridge from Tehran to the Mediterranean and try to destroy the Jewish state. So it's a very serious matter here for Israel as well.
All right, CBN Middle East Bureau Chief Chris Mitchell from Jerusalem, thank you so much for being with us.
You're welcome, John.
In other news tonight, the president of Ukraine is denying President Trump pressured him during the phone call at the heart of the impeachment inquiry. President Zelensky told reporters in Kiev that there was no blackmail.
I think, my opinion, that I don't know in any cases, but in our case, what we had, I think that this is not corruption because it was just called.
And declaring in a tweet that the Ukrainian president's defense exonerated him, President Trump said, quote, that should end this Democrat scam, but it won't because the Dems and media are fixed. This as more Americans than ever before support impeachment. More than half, 51% of all voters in a Fox News poll want President Trump impeached and removed from office. 40% oppose impeachment altogether, and 43% of Americans think what the president said on the call with Zelensky was an impeachable offense.
Here now, David Brody, CBN chief political analyst. David, let's start with that Fox News poll. Those numbers have to be concerning for the White House.
Yeah, they are, and President Trump's not happy with them either. On Twitter, he said they stink. Well, okay, he didn't say it that way, but the point is he's not happy with them at all. And if you go deeper inside the numbers, here's the problem, John, with this poll. He is up in terms of support for impeachment, which is not a good thing in this case, 11 points with Democrats. He is 3 points up among Republicans. 3% more Republicans want him impeached. 5% more white evangelicals want him impeached. This is a disastrous poll for President Trump, and if this is going to be the way forward, then, buckle your seatbelt.
Well, David, today it looks like they are expanding their legal team. President Trump announced today a former South Carolina Republican Congressman, Trey Gowdy, is joining his legal team. This is a very interesting pick because Trey Gowdy, he was the one leading the charge investigating the Obama administration.
That's right. 2 years with Benghazi. He is a tenacious prosecutor with a twang, and he's got the whole thing going on. Look, he doesn't mess around, and he's also very good on television. And I think that is something that was important to Donald Trump because you will see him as the lead guy on television. Jay Sekulow has been out there. Rudy's been out there. I think they're going to scale Rudy back. He's got a few other things going on. But Trey Gowdy, for sure, will be the guy now on television.
David, over on the other side of Capitol Hill, the Senate is considering sanctions against Turkey, including President Erdogan, for invading Syria. Is this a way to use a backdoor method to force President Trump's hand?
Well, I don't even think it's a backdoor method. I think they're saying to this president, what you did was wrong. We're going to go ahead and unilaterally, as Congress, go ahead with sanctions and deal with it. And so an aide was telling me, someone close to Lindsey Graham's office, says that they believe this could get done maybe in the next week or so. But beyond all of that, they believe the president actually may sign this sanctions bill, which, most people think President Trump would veto it and then Congress would have the votes to override it. But this aide tells me actually they think the president could actually sign the sanctions bill against Turkey, which would be interesting because he has said for Erdogan to do his thing, but he's also been kind of skeptical of the whole thing as well.
You know, David, it's rare to see this many people, this many allies of the president speaking out against his decision when it comes to Syria. What is the White House doing to tamp down on what could be a possible revolt?
Well, they say, look, it's only 50 special op forces, number one. They'll say that. They'll say we're going to obliterate Turkey economically if they mess up. And finally, this Saturday night, as we reported here first, the president will speak to the Values Voter Summit crowd. He will actually speak at a dinner in honor of Pastor Andrew Brunson, who, of course, was in Turkey being held there as a prisoner. And so this will be an opportunity for the White House and President Trump specifically to do a bit of a reset, or at least explain to a very important crowd why this move was necessary. You'll see some new language, I think, on Saturday night.
David, real quickly here, we know that this has to have an effect on President Trump. How is he handling this? Is it taking a toll on him?
I think it's definitely taking a toll. I mean, I think you can see anecdotally he looks a little bit more tired. He looks a little bit more worn. But what I noticed is there was an actual quote, and I want to just read this to you. He said these words, "I understand the other side," is what he said. And he said it 3 or 4 times. This was the day after he started getting bombarded with criticism. It's very rare for Trump to say, "I understand the other side," let alone say it 3 or 4 times. That, to me, knowing him for about 10 years or so, that he understands that he's getting a lot of incoming damage, and he's going to have to deal with that.
Yeah.
Thanks, David.
All right, David, thank you very much.
Guys.
Well, praying for peace in the midst of Washington politics. Coming up, meet the man whose job it is to minister to lawmakers on Capitol Hill.
Remember for a moment what it was like to be a child. You believed every story you were told. You saw a world full of endless possibilities. What stories will the world's orphaned and at-risk children believe? We believe the Bible tells the only story truly worth believing. We believe that every child should have the opportunity to dream, the chance to take challenges and turn them into possibilities, the chance to stand on the promises of God, to recognize their place in the greatest story ever told. They have their whole lives ahead of them. Theirs is a world of endless possibilities. They are looking for a story to believe. We will tell them that story. Will you join us?
Welcome back. In case you haven't noticed, America's political landscape today is deeply divided. And in these partisan times, there's one man in the House of Representatives whose job depends on him remaining apolitical.
Abigail Robertson recently sat down with House Chaplain Patrick Conroy to find out what it's like to minister to lawmakers. And Abigail, he says things aren't quite as bad as some might think.
That's right, Jenna. For almost 10 years now, Father Conroy's job here on the Hill has been to minister to lawmakers on both sides of the aisle. He's the one they turn to when they need pastoral care. But Conroy recently told me that before he came to Washington, he was just another American deeply disturbed by things he was hearing about happening in D.C. Take a look.
When something political would come up, I'd find myself arguing with the radio.
While teaching at a Jesuit high school in Portland, Oregon, Conroy says politics caused him deep distress.
It really was my prayer that I could let go of my lack of serenity, my anger or frustration, whatever it was, when it came to politics. And lo and behold, out of the sky comes the one job in the United States where I absolutely have to abstain from politics.
Oddly enough, Conroy says coming to the center of America's political discord answered his prayers.
In being the chaplain, what I would not want any member of Congress to encounter when they were encountering me would be disappointment, impatience, anger, judgment, or any of those things.
On the Hill, he sees firsthand the challenges facing lawmakers.
It can be brutal being in the public eye, always being criticized, rarely having the opportunity to defend yourself, and when you do, you sound to be self-serving.
Conroy says his role allows him to engage members on a personal rather than political level.
So to be mindful that your own member of Congress, no matter how critical you are, that they are also a human being who's in need of your support and your encouragement, even in their failure.
And even though the public might not feel this way, he believes civility is improving.
My sense is that the House is a better place now on that level than when I arrived.
And members are friendlier with each other than most people realize.
Some of the people over the years that in public are pitted against one another, I've seen in private sitting together, laughing together.
But on days the darkness overwhelms the atmosphere.
In your most holy name, I now cast out all spirits of darkness from this chamber, spirits not from you.
Conroy doesn't hesitate to call it out.
I cast out the spirit of petty divisiveness, which clouds the sense and the desire to be of fruitful productivity in addressing the issues more appropriately before this House.
One of those occasions, his heartfelt prayer went viral on a day he felt dark forces at work in the House, and he wanted to call the Holy Spirit back to the House floor.
There was a sense that in the House there was a darkness that really was unsettling to everybody. It was a very conscious prayer on my part, very intentional, that I wanted that prayer to be, again, a prayer not condemning or not accusing or not. I did not want to blame anybody for what happened.
Father Conroy told me he believes it's his job as House chaplain to acknowledge that and call out those spirits when he feels them. And I agree with what he said about those unexpected bipartisan friendships. I've seen a lot of them myself that I think would surprise and encourage quite a few Americans. Back to you, John and Jenna.
All right, thank you, Abby. Escaping Iraq for a new life in America. When we come back, we explain why one family is fighting to stay in the land they now call home.
Give me that. Bye. Sure, life is busy, but I found a way to make a huge difference in people's lives. I guess you could say I'm changing the world right here from home. I bring medical supplies and doctors to people in need, and dig wells so that villagers can have clean and safe water to drink. I make it possible to preach the gospel in over 100 countries, including right here in America. And when disaster strikes, I'm there, providing food, thank you, and emergency supplies to give people hope again. Every day, CBN and I are making the world a better place. Here you go. My life is hectic, so I joined CBN through Pledge Express. My bank does all the work, and I know that my gift is being used where it's needed most. So become a CBN partner and join Pledge Express, because you can do a world of good right from where you are. Hi, good morning. Are you ready to get started?
Hey, if you're tired and exhausted all day, you can't think clearly, and you really just need a cup or even a pot of coffee to get through your day, then join me, Dr. Josh Axe, for this new series where I'm going to teach you how to transform your diet, and use essential oils and supplements to get a better night's sleep.
Get Protect Your Sleep and live your best life with innovative information from 5 leading sleep experts.
If you're not a great sleeper, you can do things to make yourself a great sleeper. If you're already a pretty good sleeper, you can enhance your sleep and be even better.
Discover a sleep-enhancing bedtime routine, how to put insomnia to rest, learn how to relieve pain that disturbs sleep, and much more in Protect Your Sleep.
Everything you do better with a good night's sleep.
Wake up to your best life. Call 1-800-700-7000 to get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep today.
Don't miss out on this brand new series.
A Virginia family is praying for a miracle. 6 years ago, they came to the United States for a better life.
Now, as Eric Phillip reports, a demand from the government of Iraq threatens that dream to crumble from reality.
The journey for this family began in Iraq, where the government helped make it possible for them to come to America. Now, Iraq wants them home, and that's literally creating a life or death decision. At first glance, John Boutros appears like a healthy, energetic 2-year-old. Sadly, there's much more to this toddler than immediately meets the eye.
The most difficult part for me, seeing my child suffering as a mom.
And I cannot imagine losing him. It's very difficult.
And it makes the entire family's situation difficult as well. In 2013, Wissam Toma and his wife, both Christians, left Iraq for him to attend Virginia Commonwealth University and earn a PhD in pharmacology and toxicology. During that time, the couple had 2 children, Miriam and John. The family celebrated at Wissam's graduation in 2018. Behind the smiles, however, was worry.
It's very difficult and very frustrating, very stressful too.
The stressful situation began with their son, John.
He was fine, he was happy, nothing was wrong with him when he was born.
Then, at only 6 months old, John contracted a viral infection. Although it went away after a couple of months, it left him not wanting to eat. Doctors eventually discovered painful ulcers and fluid going to John's lungs. As he began to lose weight, doctors inserted a feeding tube.
He was not comfortable at all. He was sad, congested all of the time from that tube. He'll sneeze, the tube will come out, and we have to put it back. It was a very kind of painful process. Sometimes blood will come out of his nose, he'll choke.
Then came unexplained seizures, kidney stones, and abnormal growth. Doctors ran all kinds of tests looking for answers. Finally, in July, the family got a diagnosis from doctors here at the Children's Hospital of Richmond at VCU that answered some questions, but perhaps created even more. John was diagnosed with a genetic disorder. It's called Nicolaides-Baraitser syndrome.
It's very rare. I have never seen a case with it. There are 75 cases in the world. He needs a number of physicians to work with him, neurology, kidney doctors, feeding and developmental specialists that we have here at Children's Hospital of Richmond.
Big open.
Treatment that John certainly would not get back in Iraq, although that doesn't concern government officials there. They want Wissam back because he signed a government contract to receive the scholarship.
The agreement is if the student doesn't come back home, he's required to pay back all his due on a lump sum.
And that totals more than $300,000, money the family does not have. Wissam's offered to pay back the loan in installments, but Iraq says no. He's reached out to both the U.S. Embassy in Baghdad and the Iraqi Embassy in Washington. Neither can help due to the binding document. What's worse, Wissam's siblings co-signed the contract, and now the government is garnishing their pay.
They say, I know you're trying your best to help that, but you have to come back.
His family back home is in a situation because of us, and we care about them too. But we had no choice in this situation also. Nobody wished to have a sick child.
After being turned down for a loan, the family started a GoFundMe account online, but have only raised a fraction of what they need.
As Christians, we always hold our cross and walk everywhere. Like in the Psalm 23rd. Even if I walk in the valley of shadow of death, I shall fear no evil because you are with me. So this is our life there. We accept everything, but now the major issue of us is John's health.
What do you want to see happen?
A miracle. We have faith in God, we believe in God, and we believe in miracles.
The family believes there's an answer to their situation, but so far they haven't found it. They're hoping that by getting their story out, someone may have a suggestion that will point them in the right direction. In the meantime, they're feeling the weight of the world on their shoulders. In Washington, Eric Phillips, CBN News.
Still ahead, how one Supreme Court justice says faith helped him through some of life's darkest times.
We will move the American embassy to the eternal capital of the Jewish people, Jerusalem.
As the nations rage, you can stand with Israel.
History is being written, and I want to be a part of it.
Call 1-800-700-7000 and get to life.
This is our nature as a country.
Discover the untold story of how Israeli volunteers are changing the world.
We consider it our duty to reach out and help others around the world.
For a gift of $10 or more, you can own the acclaimed CBN documentary To Life.
To treat a human, no matter what he is, which religious he have, which color he is, this is what I'm doing.
Support Israel in their time of need. Get to Life, now available on DVD. Call 1-800-700-7000 or log on to cbn.com.
And I wish that other people throughout the world could see this side of Israel.
Orphans Promise is committed to loving and serving at-risk children, to helping keep families together, and to creating opportunities for strong and sustainable communities around the world. We're working in over 60 countries around the world, and with your help, we can do even more. There's an old African proverb I love that says, if you want to run fast, run alone. But if you want to run far, run together. At Orphans Promise, we want to run far so we can touch the lives of as many orphaned and vulnerable children as possible. But we don't want to go alone. We're out to change the world, one child, one family, one community at a time. Will you join us?
Well, the Supreme Court kicked off a new term this week. It marks 28 years on the High Court for Associate Justice Clarence Thomas.
Recently, Thomas spoke about his faith, saying there was a time in his life he suffered hardships and felt like he had nowhere to turn. He says that's when he turned to the church and found healing.
Within those walls, with God's help and grace, I was able to elevate my thoughts beyond my circumstances and self-absorption, and set my mind on things that are above, not on things that are on earth, as St. Paul wrote in the letter to the Colossians.
Now, Thomas made those remarks at a dedication ceremony for a chapel at his alma mater, Hillsdale College in Michigan. He told students there, within the walls of the church, one can often find peace and true sanctuary.
All right, well, congratulations to him, and they've got a busy term ahead.
That is very true. Well, that does it for tonight's Faith Nation.
Have a good night.